when I did the Euros, I watched almost every minute of that tournament just because I swapped my sleep schedule to the European sleep schedule. So I was up for all the game slots. I always say to people, between 2012 and 2015, football in this country felt red hot. I'd say that from the Premier League, there's 95% criticism, 5% positivity. And that feeds football media over there. We wouldn't be able to do that over here, or maybe we would, but no one's going to take that gamble.
This was not meant to happen. This could not happen. This is happening.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another very special edition of The Coach's Son Parks the Bus. We have with us TV presenter, football extraordinaire, Claudio Fabiano. Thank you so much for joining The Coach's Son.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really excited. And I don't know if you're going to tell everyone where we crossed paths, how many beers we had at that time in the morning, and why I'm here.
We may as well. To be fair, by that stage, I only had about 4 or 5 beers to calm the nerves. Stephen probably had about 10 at that stage. Right.
I was only there from 10:30. So how many beers can you fit in 7 hours?
That's right. Yeah. It was at the Surrey Hills Hotel there to watch, obviously, Tottenham win the Europa League. We weren't nervous or stressed at all. That's why we weren't drinking the beers. But that's where we crossed paths. We had obviously our big fat heads on the TV screen on the live stream. But Claudio, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, it's all about you. We're not going to be talking about Tottenham as much this podcast. Thank you to everybody listening. You're welcome for once. But yeah, like I said, how we like to start the podcast and the interview. Essentially, like how did football come into your life?
Football's been in my life since I can remember. You know, I think that's the case with a lot of kids of migrant families. You know, that was the case for me. Football was a connection between me. My older brother's almost 10 years older than me. So ever since I can remember, he was already playing. So I was always growing up around his games and going to the park to watch him with my dad, my grandfather as well, and just connecting over a lot of Italian football, local football here, which was kind of transitioning still, you know, the back end of the NSL days. I remember going to watch Sydney Olympic Parramatta Power once when I was really young. My dad took me. And then, of course, watching a lot of Serie A on TV, and the Premier League was getting really big at the time. So that was my connection to football. And then I played from about 5-6 years old and, you know, had a mixed relationship with the game through all those years, but always really loved it in the end. And so then I was fortunate enough to take a weird kind of career pivot and landed somewhere where I never really envisioned when I was growing up. But being able to talk about the game, being able to create content around the game, meet awesome people, tell stories, and just kind of live so attached to football, but in a way that I never thought I would. So yeah, that's right. That's kind of all of it in a nutshell.
It's interesting. I mean, you didn't envision where you are today. Was there another goal in mind? What were you planning to become when you're getting older?
Well, when I was, you know, my teenage years, I wanted to play football full time, and I was following a lot of those things that were necessary. And in those days, there wasn't as good of a pathway, but you know, NPL and a little bit of A-League youth, that's kind of the pathway people went down. And then, you know, had a few stints overseas as well at a young age as a teenager, and kind of was on that trajectory. And then it was a mix of a few things, but I think ultimately I didn't play much between the age of 18 and 21, 22. And I ended up getting a hip replacement and all these other stuff that went on. So I was kind of like, okay, well, there's my journey in football probably done. I'll try come back to playing for fun, but I'll, you know, go study at uni. So I did that, and I was studying commerce at uni, not really knowing where I wanted to end up. But fortunately for me, my older brother, who'd been working in media and sports media and football media in the UK, he moved back home to Australia and kind of took me under his wing, saw that I was a bit lost in what I wanted to do and wasn't sure where my passion for football was sitting anymore. And together we kind of started creating some content together around the game that we love, just for free, just for ourselves. But that's how we got the knack of it and met other like-minded people. And one thing led to another. I literally started with an interview of someone you've had on this show. My first ever interview was Alex Brosk for a charity, Common Goal. And from there, you know, one person sees it, another person sees that, and it all just snowballed.
That's unreal. Yeah, I mean, growing up, to be fair, even with me as well, like I've done a journalism degree at uni, and I've always wanted to get out there and do something like this, and I
Mm.
didn't have the guts to do it, so to speak. But then, obviously, with these guys, we're like, oh, let's jump onto a podcast and start doing it because that's the going trend now, and everyone seems to be doing it. So there's a way you'd be able to keep still within the game, maybe not physically playing or coaching or anything like that, but you can still be able to watch the games, talk about the games, and show your passion and love for the game.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think this is something I've been thinking about recently because I ended up coming back to playing after years not playing. And I realized that I think there's an issue sometimes with players that are in a pretty elite environment growing up. I think they're made to believe that this is the only way you need to go. And if you don't make it, so to speak, a lot of them that I meet later on, some of them went on to be pro, and that's awesome. Some of them didn't. And they have a real bad relationship with the game, and they don't do
Yeah.
anything in football. And it's like you realize when you go on that A, there's so many levels you can play at, but B, there's so many ways you can stay in touch with the game that are really rewarding, and you can even turn it into your career as well, whether that's media or business or there's so many silos to do with football, and they can take you still around the whole world too. So it's really cool, and I think that's something that needs to be fixed. It's a bit of a mentality piece of young elite footballers, but maybe another topic. But yeah, it's great that you guys even have the podcast, and that's your way of expressing and staying in touch with the game as well.
Yeah, 100%. We get to speak to big people and big guests and stuff like that, and get a bit of an insight to what it's like at an elite level. And people can listen here, then hear those stories. And for us, we're sometimes sitting in awe just of these stories that we hear from people. We love that. We love that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. But obviously, working in media, working in football media, as more specifically, what's a day-to-day look like?
For me, I've got a pretty unique situation. So, like my day to day, they're never the same because I've remained independent through a lot of it. So I'm not signed to any broadcaster or any sort of management or anything. And I was able to do that because I started my own media company. So I'm kind of split between days. In the middle of a football season, I'll create a show for SBS on a Monday, which is a free to wear highlight show. On a Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm working with my own company. So we have a lot of brand things. We've shot a lot for football, from shows to social media content to podcasts and everything. Then on a Thursday, I'm in at Optus Sport. And that's when I'm creating my more weekly shows there. On the weekend, I'll go in and do some live matches. This season, it's been the early Premier League match that we've been working on every Saturday night at 9:30. So it's really never the same. And then tournaments come around and everything changes. When it's tournament time, then you've got to take time off everything else because it's just fully focused. You might be working from midnight through to 9 a.m. covering live matches and writing things and appearing on podcasts and doing news hits. And, your whole world becomes that tournament, which for me, the most recent one was the Euros last year with Optus. So then your day-to-day is completely different. So, yeah, no 2 days are the same for me. But when it is a footballing day, it's often really early mornings, getting up, watching as much as you can, reading as much as you can, and then it's about kind of producing and executing the content, either morning, day, night. There is no 9 to 5s in this game.
Especially no sleep on the weekend. If you're like us, trying to stay up for the 2 a.m. game, you might fall asleep. You wake up, Optus Sport. First thing you click on, overnight goals, although you've already seen half of them. And then the Hungry Jack's bites with Claude's here. Get to see your beautiful head every weekend, which is lovely.
That's what I was going to ask as well, because obviously with the time differences, like, do you have to get up and watch or stay up and watch, majority of the games at least? Obviously not to watch every single game, but like, do you have to stay up and watch 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then obviously present on it, or do you go, I'm just going to watch the overnight goals and watch the highlights, and then get a bit of feedback from other people who actually watch the game and to present on it?
Yeah, it kind of depends what I'm doing, like my job as a host, as a presenter, often is not to be too analytical on the games. So I find a lot of the time my skill set is having a base knowledge on everything rather than a really high knowledge of a specific topic. So I don't really try and watch too much. Not, for example, if I've got a show on a Monday that I'm doing for SBS where I'm covering every league around the world, my preparation for that's not watching a 90-minute game because I can't possibly watch every game. There's not enough time in a week for me to prepare a show. So I developed the skill pretty early on of just being subscribed to the right news outlets, being able to kind of stay across the top stories in as many different leagues as I can. And I slowly felt that I was developing a skill where I'd bump into a Danish person and I'd kind of know what's going on in that league over there. I'd kind of know who's doing well in Switzerland. I'd obviously know the European top 7 leagues. I know who's through in the next round of the Copa Libertadores, and I know what's happening in Australia. I try to keep an eye on all the MPLs in all the states, right? So my job as a host is having the base knowledge of everything, and then can throw over to the experts who have to have watched the 90 minutes, who have to be able to tell everyone why that happened and what they saw.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard because obviously if you're trying to report something in detail that you haven't seen or you might have heard from someone else, you don't want to get it wrong, right? So like you don't want to say the wrong thing.
No, of course. And you're very well prepared for stuff like that. I mean, you never go into a show without having seen things that are in the rundown. And then whenever you're doing live football, so for example, when I did the Euros, I watched almost every minute of that tournament just because I swapped my sleep schedule to the European sleep schedule. So I was up for all the game slots. So that was an example where, yes, when you're live, you need to be ultra prepared because you don't know what's going to happen or what's going to be said. And so in those cases, I was very well equipped because I'd seen everything. But when it's just like a pre-recorded show or something and you just got to be on top of so many different countries and leagues, you make sure when you look at the rundown, you leave nothing to chance. You go back, you see all the key moments. If there's a VAR shout, you watch as many angles as you can. You read what people are saying online before you go into the studio, for sure. You have to.
Well, a lot of the shows you're on, you pretty much cover everything anyway. So it's, how can you dive into one thing when you got to cover literally the world of football? You do that on SBS as well. You got the weekly football wrap. How did that opportunity come about? Because not a lot of people probably know that show's on TV, and we would have grown up watching the World Game and SBS be the main hub for football. How did the opportunity come about for you to jump on SBS?
Yeah, SBS was an awesome one because it came about in the lead up to the 22 World Cup, and my company and my colleagues, we were producing a show for beIN Sports at the time, weekly, and it was coming up to the World Cup, and coincidentally, beIN Sports invited us to an event. It was, I think, the cricket was on, and they invited us, and I didn't go because I'm not the biggest fan, but my business partner went, and in the box, he met one of the guys from SBS, and they were talking football coverage. He was familiar with our show. He didn't realize what we did. And really casually, he said, well, we don't have a daily show for the World Cup, so why don't you guys pitch something to us? And, this was after a few beers. So when we got back to the office then on Monday, my business partner was like, I'm pretty sure he said this to me, like we should pitch something to them. And we did, and they straight away came in, met us. They loved the fact that everyone involved in the production was a football fan that grew up on SBS. Yes, we were all quite younger skewed, but everyone, from the people holding the cameras to the presenters to the ones creating the graphics, everyone has either played the game or watched the game growing up. And they felt this authenticness. So they said, listen, we're not even going to go to anyone else. Just do the show for us. And we got to do a daily show during the World Cup. It was on at 5 p.m. every day on SBS, and it was awesome. It's by far the show I'm most proud of my entire career because we created it all in our own studio. I got to send one of my best mates to Qatar. He was reporting from the ground. Everything about it was just so good, so much fun. And so from that, we had a bit of time off after the World Cup, but then we regathered with SBS, and they're like, look, we got the next World Cup, and we don't have weekly football anymore. So there's no other team we'd want rather than you guys to slowly bring football back to our platform. We'll build this up over the next 2 years before the biggest World Cup ever is going to be on our channel. And so that's been our job, to just slowly get football back on their socials, weekly on their programming. And the plans are big for the next 12 months as well.
I want to ask, obviously for someone that's within the business, that if there's a market for or an appetite for something like, Monday Night Football, how Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher used to literally dissect teams, shapes, formation, players, clubs, transfers, and within depth. And it's one of the criticisms I have of rugby league. Obviously, as you know, in Sydney, in Australia, it's a massive sport. And they just can't get it right. I would love to see a show. I'm a rugby league fan. I do watch the game, not as much as I watch football. But they don't do a very good job of actually dissecting in detail like Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher used to do on Monday Night Football, which would increase people's knowledge. So when they are watching the game, they're not just watching it, blankly and blindly. They're watching with a bit of understanding which will then generate a lot more conversation with the sport. Do you think that there was an appetite for Australians to, with football, to have like a weekly tactical analysis kind of show like that?
It's interesting because now with social media, you can get so much of that already from overseas. And I guess the question to you is, are you saying for the Premier League, for the A-League, or are you saying for all of world football? Well, what do you think?
I think it would benefit the A-League.
Right.
I genuinely think it would benefit the A-League because it would start, if someone understands something, they will start to want to see more of it, right? A lot of people don't want to see something or want to be involved in something if they don't understand it. And again, that's one of my criticisms of the rugby league is that, the TV ratings might be going through the roof, but their crowd, the numbers are dropping. And it's turning me off the game as well because it's just they just talk about rubbish on all their media shows. If we as well, with the A-League, to try and pump those numbers up, to try and get that up, if we can start understanding why players are making certain runs, why coaches are making certain decisions, why clubs are doing certain transfers or whatever it may be, people might start getting more involved and interested and have their own opinions of whatnot. I mean, any publicity is good publicity sometimes with people's opinions. But I think if people start to actually understand the players, understand the coaches and the reasons behind a lot of decisions, people might invest some more interest in the A-League. Like I said, with the Premier League, it's probably not overdone, but we can get that anywhere. But I think there's probably an opportunity there for the A-League.
I think you're spot on, but I think with the A-League, it's a tricky one as well. I'm good friends with the guy that went in there, I guess, as a contractor this season and produced all those new shows for the A-League, right? He's behind the scenes. He's not someone that's sung about because that's usually the case. The ones that actually get the stuff done behind the scenes, you've got no idea who they are. And he went in there and spun up all these new shows. So he's got, the A-League's Download, and he's got the other one. He's got the Tactician, which I think his ambition was exactly what you said here. His ambition was that people would watch that to find out the key moments, why it happened, maybe refereeing decisions, tactically why that team is winning at the moment, what they're doing so well. With Danny McBreen, a lot of the time does that. So I think, it is the first season that they've brought those shows in. Unfortunately, there's a disconnect between the league, the broadcaster, right? So these shows are just sitting on YouTube at the moment. So it's not really a TV show. You can flick on at a consistent time, but they are there. They're on YouTube. And they came out of nothing. When you look at the A-League last year, had no programming. It was such a difficult league to consume last season. This season had way more programming available. Sure, it was on YouTube. It wasn't on TV. That might not have the same effect as the old Fox Sports days in a nice big studio, but they're trying, and I think you're right. That content is good. The other thing, unfortunately, is when you're dealing with something like the A-League and something that's been, I don't want to say on a knife edge, but it's been sitting in a bit of a dark spot for the last few years with everything that happened in the TV deals. A lot of people are quite worried to criticize, to do, some of the best content that comes out of England. It's the biggest league in the world. They got no problem sitting down and smashing Manchester United, and you got former players and they're hammering it. And, do you think anyone would do that to the Newcastle Jets or Brisbane Roar here? They wouldn't, because it is so fragile, unfortunately, that people internally as well don't want to talk down on it because it's in such a fragile state that they're worried if we talk down on it and fans don't go to the games or don't pay attention, it could fall over. So there is this kind of idea of keeping things brand safe in the sense of keeping everything positive, and that sometimes strips away from the analysis. When you're dealing with a beast like the Premier League, they can go in, and they do go in. And look at how much criticism. There's more. I'd say that from the Premier League, there's 95% criticism, 5% positivity, and that feeds football media over there. We wouldn't be able to do that over here, or maybe we would, but no one's going to take that gamble at the moment.
Yeah, I think though, obviously, if I'm going back to obviously the Monday Night Football show with Gary Neville and stuff, where they're genuinely explaining how and why things are occurring. Back then, it was less bashing of clubs and players and stuff like that. And I think obviously they've picked up that people like the bashing of players. To me, you look at Arsenal Fan TV, that only became big because of one reason, because of the bashing 100%. Of the club, right? That's what sold, right? But I think, I mean, for people that are genuinely interested in learning about the game or genuinely watching the game as well, up-and-coming players, up-and-coming coaches as well, I feel like there's probably an appetite there for people to actually start understanding it a bit more, and a bit better on a tactical side, formation side, or a decision-making side as well with clubs.
And as a football fan, you love to see it. That's why they've done those shows on YouTube. But unfortunately, when you're working with a broadcaster, you're working with 10, you're working with people that are from entertainment. The shows that get funded, for example, that are on 10 are a lot more light touch because they're trying to keep them sponsor friendly, reach out to the average Channel 10 viewer that might have just finished MasterChef or what's this, and they are not quite at the level to understand that tactical analysis. So unfortunately at the moment, that tactical side on the A-League is either existing on podcasts, right? Or on those shows on YouTube, but not on the broadcasters. So it's a tough issue. I completely hear what you're saying from a football fan point of view. And then I also see it from the other point of view of what the producers might be feeling where they're like, they need to try and make as much money for the league as possible. And if that means a little bit safer, watered down content, unfortunately, that's what gets signed off. But I hear you. And I think as the league grows, there'll be more and more of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, it's the most participated sport in the country, right? So you want to start seeing, big crowds in the stadiums, people watching on TV and just talking about it in general, more than what the other sports are.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see for another half an hour on SBS Monday night, Tuesday night after the main show, of course. Now, I want to talk about the second most important topic of today's podcast, and that's Optus Sport being live at Surrey Hills Hotel during the Europa League final. If you haven't gone and seen it, jump onto YouTube. Make sure you watch the whole thing. Unfortunately, I'm probably on there more than Claude's is. Claude's, honestly, have you seen a bigger bunch of sooks at the full-time whistle than those Spurs supporters?
It was amazing to see. It was really good to see. I'm glad that Optus wanted to do that, because sometimes in the broadcast world, if you're not showing the rights to the game, they'll just try and ignore it. But I really love that about Optus. They were like, look, it doesn't matter that we don't have the game. This is a great story for Australian football. There are so many fans that are gathering. We've heard at this place. Let's go. Let's just get down there and amongst it. And show that you can create content without even having the rights. And that was exactly that. It was cool to be there. I'm not a Tottenham fan. I never have been. I've never been a huge supporter of the club, but just to have Postecoglou at the helm and to see an Australian that's come from where we've come from go and achieve that, I found myself going for Spurs, like 100%. Every kick of the ball, I was really hoping that Spurs beat United. So it was great to share that with all those people. And I was surprised how many people, I don't think I'm over obvious about who I support in European football. But when I walked in, I was surprised how many Spurs fans knew who I support in the Premier League and were giving it to me for the first 10 minutes.
There was two of us. And
was it you?
You're looking at him.
There was another old guy while I was live that walked past and whispered something to me, and I was like, "What? Like, where did you get that from?" Like, but it's great. It's what we love about the rivalry. It's all healthy stuff, and it was great to share that with you guys. The noise when the goal went in was crazy. It was way more than the full-time whistle or the trophy lift. The noise when you guys scored was so worth it. It was awesome.
I was honestly waiting for you to put your beer down, turn around, and just clock everyone in the nose.
Not on live stream. Can't be doing that on live stream.
Exactly. I'll wait for the cameras. I didn't see you when the cameras ended. That's why I was looking for you.
Game of professional. Well, that's the thing with Surrey Hills Hotel. I mean, obviously, that's an official supporter group for Sydney Oz Spurs, and that's the typical meetup that we go to. I mean, that was a ticketed event, the final, because they knew how many people were going to go. But we've been to like North London Derby nights, for example, at a midnight kickoff, and would have to be there at 7, 8 p.m. because we know it'd be packed out. And then where those windows are outside, people are standing outside watching the game because they can't get in, especially on those big nights. Then we've been other mornings as well for Europa League mornings and whatnot at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're giving us breakfast and coffees and whatnot as well, which is great for us Spurs fans to have somewhere we can go and talk with other Spurs fans as well, which is fantastic.
So good. And people overseas, they're always shocked as I grow in this game and I meet other people that broadcast in other countries. They always see my stories whenever I post something like that, and they just can't believe that Australians pack out a pub in the middle of the night to go watch football. It's just such a unique culture, and the dedication for these fans of European clubs is really special over here. And sometimes I think, I really love when I hear, like you guys are saying, you have that level of passion, dedication for a European club. You also really want your local game to grow, and you support your local game. And that's awesome. I think most people should have both, because there's beautiful things that the game overseas can give us, and there's beautiful things that the local game can give us, and there's enough space to enjoy both. So it's really cool. But it's, mate, I'll tell you what, it's a testament to you guys getting up in the middle of the night and doing that.
Well, we did it in 2019 for the Champions League final. That didn't end very well for us. So that was probably a worse game. Obviously, the United Spurs game was highly entertaining.
Yeah.
But I think what you mentioned before about obviously like the NSL, like I'm at an age as well where I do remember the NSL. I used to go to the Olympic Games and also the Parramatta Power Games myself. And I think for people around our age who still have some connections and ties to who we supported, so obviously I supported Sydney Olympic, it was hard for us to get a grasp of the A-League. But I think for the generations now growing up, and this is why I truly believe that the league will grow, because the kids growing up now only know the A-League. They've got no idea about the NSL, and they're going to be tied to a club, be tied to a team, and go and support that team. I genuinely believe in 10, 15 years' time, it will get bigger because of the aging population of the kids growing up today.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear people, I've got a guy that actually works with me, and he's quite young, and he's got like a classic Brisbane Raw kit, and I'm like, classic, like, but it's already 20 years, like, and all the teenagers today, that's all they remember is the A-League. It has been really good for Australian football, like it has. I remember when I came in, going to Sydney FC games in the first season, and it was a step up in a lot of ways. It's unfortunate, having played for a few of those foundation clubs as well, it's unfortunate the way they were treated, particularly in those early years. It would have been awesome just to see them still integrated to some degree, which is now happening after 20 years. Yeah. But still, the A-League has been really good. It's had its ups and downs, but let's be real, it's had some peak years. The unfortunate thing for me was the A-League didn't take long to light up at all, and going into between, I always say to people, between 2012 and 2015, football in this country felt red hot, right? With the injection of the Wanderers, with the Asian Cup at home, with the Melbourne Derby heating up and the players that were playing here, it was really it was doing something special. Unfortunately, what followed that and killing the active support in a lot of ways, that hurt the game immensely, because I always think, like, and even now, you just had the Melbourne Derby final. Like, unfortunately, what separates our game from everything else, you can say the football, the sport, okay, but forget the sport for a second. What separates our game is the fans, right? What connects them to the clubs. You go to a football match, and even if the game is boring, is like that Europa League final, you look around you, and that's enough to keep you entertained, right? And there's not many other sports like that, which is why you said rugby league is having great TV numbers, but the crowds are going the other way, because who wants to go to a rugby league stadium, really? Like, what are you going to get that you don't get on TV? But football, you get a whole atmosphere. You get a whole different experience when you go to the game. And unfortunately, this country doesn't quite understand that, or there are some people that try and suppress that. But I hope over time that is more accepted and that is, allowed to grow.
Yeah. I think, for example, I went over to London over a year and a half ago in the wintertime, and I took Mrs. with me, who's got zero interest in all sports whatsoever. But obviously, we're going to go watch a football game. We're going to watch Spurs play. And it was Spurs v Bournemouth. And even she said, like, she loved it. And she's like, I just had a feeling that we were all a part of the game. Like, from the coaches to the players to the fans, that the fans just bring something that everyone's a part of the game and everyone's got a hand on the result. And I'm like, for someone who's got no idea about sport and no interest in sport, to actually get that feeling walking away from the stadium that she's actually felt something, she's a part of something, it's huge. And you're right, only the fans can bring that kind of energy and passion.
Man, like, it's and sometimes they're the best tellers, these people like that. I've had a few stories of people close to me. When I went to Europe, I was 19, 20, I think, and I went with my girlfriend at the time, and she'd never been to a football match in her life, and I wanted to go to Barcelona Atletico Madrid because it happened to be in Barcelona when La Liga was on. I'm like, I'm getting a ticket to this game. And so her first football match was Barcelona Atletico Madrid at the Nou Camp, and sitting next to like this diehard old Catalan man who was just going mental for 90 minutes. And that was exactly her reaction as well. It was like, this is amazing. This is incredible. Didn't really know what was happening on the field, but it didn't matter. It was the experience around her, and she felt 90,000 people. This was the most important things in their life for that 90 minutes, and you can't help but feel that buzz. I recently went to watch football in Europe again and work a little bit. And as amazing as England is for everything in the league, you travel around Europe and the atmosphere just gets better and better. I'll be real with you. When you leave the UK, like, the UK is great in a lot of ways, but when you leave and you go to the rest of Europe, you see it's even crazier and crazier. It goes up a few more levels.
Yeah, it's nuts. I've been to quite a few games in Greece, and
Mm.
they've just got no cares in the world about authority. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just that bad. I mean, I didn't have the same passion like going to watch the games over there regarding obviously supporting a team, but sitting there and just soaking in the atmosphere and just
Mm.
watching what's going on around me in the stands. It's like you can't get this with any other sport, and you're not going to get this
Yeah.
with any other sport.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. It's so good. Unfortunately, sometimes you got to take the good with the bad because a few people carry it too far, and that's the issue with football. But I don't know. That's always the tough issue, weighing that up and saying whether it's worth it.
100%. Now we'll go back onto you and your career. We'll definitely want to ask them. You'd have some highlights, obviously traveling around the world and whatnot. What would be a professional highlight of yours that you still remember?
Yeah, they're all highlights in their own way. And as I said before, I work a little bit differently to most people in this industry. So because I run my own company, having the FIFA World Cup Daily Show in my own studios with my own people that I can send to Qatar. So I sent a videographer and a talent reporter that I went to school with, and they're football fanatics. And for the two of them, it opened so many doors being there. And then the people producing my show from here. So that was a highlight in my own way because it felt like I really achieved something and was able to take my team along with me. So that whole month was amazing. But then I guess from like a presenting point of view and personal standpoint, a lot of my work with Optus Sport, sending me to work on a couple of Premier League games. I actually worked on one at Tottenham Hotspur against West Ham, not the season that just passed, the one before. So I was down pitch side doing a few crosses back, and that was really cool. But then the Euros was a professional highlight for me because I've always felt live production, being able to host football matches live is a unique skill. Being able to host anything live is a unique skill. And it kind of separates, when you're talking from a professional point of view, it separates a lot of people. It's still considered the top job because you're kind of sitting there and you're conducting the whole broadcast in your ear and in your head. You're controlling the pace of this broadcast, and you're also helping these analysts next to you shine. And then you're bringing in people from around the world and you're bringing in highlights, and there's just so much on your plate when you're hosting a match. So for me, that experience of Euro 24 from a professional standpoint was the most special because I got to be given the keys to that, got given the top job, relatively young for this industry, and got to make it my own. So that was really fun. And I crave live broadcasts. I always want to do more and more live because once you get it, it's like that hit that you're enjoying this at the same time as the fans. It's so good.
Well, tell us a bit more about your own company. I Won It Yesterday, I believe it's called. Yeah, tell us a bit more. And what are you hoping to achieve with it?
Well, I Won It Yesterday was interesting because for us, it was like we had a look at the media industry and felt it's not easy to get in. I'm sure you guys understand it. So many people understand that it's difficult, and traditional media has a lot of walls up. And when you're kind of young and ambitious and you want to create things, I saw a lot of people go into those traditional broadcasters or print outlets or whatever form of media you're in, and they kind of, you're getting coffees for a few years, you're pigeonholed to do one job, and a lot of them lose their creativity and their enthusiasm over time. So we felt, look, if we all get together, and you know what, it was COVID time too, which was a time when people were desperate for content and couldn't create it. And we got together and thought, listen, if we create our own thing, we can create our own shows. We just get people. So a lot of the boys were straight out of uni or still in uni and just like learning as we go. We shot our first football show at my grandma's house. It was a bedroom that wasn't getting used anymore. We shot a show that ended up going on air to be in sports in this old bedroom. We painted it black and we hung these lights up. And I mean, you think about it now, there's no way a broadcaster would take a show shot in a bedroom, but they didn't know at the time. And we did a really good job just of finding out, talking to people, how do you build a studio? Let's figure it out. How do you host a show? Let's figure it out. How do you edit a show? And that was an awesome time because we were just literally learning as we went. And that started the business. I Won It Yesterday. It represents people that want to achieve something that is usually not possible that early in your career. And so kind of young, I guess, trailblazing people. And these are not just the people in front of camera. That's what you don't see. It's also the people that say, I want to produce a show in my 20s. I want to create a documentary. Now, why not? Because I know about this topic. So that's what our business represents. And now we have 3 studios in Sydney, and we have a whole host of podcasts, vodcasts, shows shot out of our place, and really enjoying the journey. We've got some cool plans over the next year or so in football and also out of football. a little bit more of our own brand, and we kind of want to get that out there so people learn more about us as well. But it's been an awesome journey for me, and it's allowed me to try things and grow my skill set quicker than I would have if I would have just gone into a broadcaster and waited for my time. It's allowed me to get my hands dirty and do things at a really young age. And now I can say that I've learned all those skills because of that.
You somewhat become like a coach in your own right. Like you're helping all these young people develop their dreams and become who they want to be as well. And you somewhat become a coach to them and a mentor.
Yeah, I guess so. That's something that when I, started creating a lot of content on social media and then I got TV gigs, I was like, well, I don't see why I can't just bring those people on here because it worked for me. So, a lot of those guys now that I look at that were on my football content on beIN Sports or on that World Cup show in 22, a lot of them have gone on to do TV. One of my best mates, the one that I told you I sent to Qatar, Damo, he's full-time at Optus Sport. He's hosting all that stuff. He's just at Anfield last week for the parade and for the last game of the season. So, a lot of these people that I've worked with, they've gone on to carve their own space in the industry. Some of them have gone to different sports, and that's cool. That's fine. But, it's just, it is a pleasure to see them go and do their own thing. And then also get another generation of people in now that are teaching me stuff that I don't know because it's a whole nother gen and they have a whole different way of doing things too.
That's unreal. Now, before we get on to the big question that we warned you about before we started recording, there's another question that I've asked a TV presenter before in the past. As you obviously know, Fabrizio Romano's famous sign-off is "Here we go." There's been different variations from other people across all social media platforms. Surely you've thought about having your own. Surely you've got some ideas you can throw at us so we can tell you what's good or what's bad. So you can start hearing it when you're on TV.
That's a good. So because he's "Here we go" is just iconic because when he says it, it's a done deal. I don't know,
That's right.
but he's the transfer guy. Whereas what am I? What would I need a catchphrase for? Like opening a show or signing off a show? Do you reckon?
Absolutely, signing off a show.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of, it was Anchorman, the movie. What's the main guy's always got a famous sign off on there. That's what makes him the biggest Anchorman in the movie. Surely you've got to have a sign off.
I think
you know what to look forward to at the end.
That's true. I think I haven't thought about this. You know what I do think about when I start a show? I don't use cue reader, so I don't use an auto cue on my shows, but I often think about whatever's trending at that moment. Like recently, I think the Formula One was starting and I was doing a preview show for the FA Cup. So I just was thinking about my intro in my head and then I delivered it and it was like an intro kind of tying football clubs to Formula One drivers, and that kind of thing. But then you don't think of the outro. I don't know if I have one, That's a good, I think between the three of us, we should come up with one and you guys can have it. You guys let me know and whatever it is.
Of your shows from now on. I'll be watching every single one. Make sure, and if you do miss it, I'll be like, mate, what are you doing?
We'll come up with something good, something witty, but something professional.
Something real. You know what I mean? I want it to be something real. If I do come up with something, it's got to be something authentic to, I guess, a football audience. It's got to be something authentic to a football audience, almost like a message at the end.
You gotta feel it. I'm a big believer of if you want to develop mottos or names for things or whatever it is, it's got to come from your history and your upbringing and where you're from. So it's got to mean something to you, but it's also got to be felt from the receiver. So we'll come up with something. It's something we've got to think about for sure.
One thing I love doing, I love being on SBS because they encourage this a lot, is if you're covering a certain country of football or a certain culture, throwing in as many words as you can learn from their language, either when you're opening the show. If I was, I don't speak any Greek, right? But if tomorrow I was covering Olympiacos Panathinaikos, I would love to learn a couple of Greek words to either open the preview or close the preview. I think that stuff is always really special. And just that Greek person at home just appreciates it so much,
Absolutely. You don't want to do what Joey Biden did and put on a fake French accent when he was playing.
You don't want to do a lot of things that Joe Biden does, to be honest.
Les Murray used to do it. Les Murray used to do it, didn't he? When during World Cup times, how great was that? You see those clips all the time coming around the great Les Murray.
But you know what? Even his pronunciation of all he obviously studied how to pronounce every single. This is his surname. I mean, you hear it best in that Zinedine Zidane song. It just takes me back to that song. That
Yeah.
scene in the background, the way he pronounced every single name is spot on to that nation.
Yeah, no, it was a legend. You know what? I was just whipping up the final episode. I was interviewing Andy Pascalidis, who, was on SBS for 10 years in that golden period. And to put together this piece, I asked SBS, I was like, you guys have any archive footage that I could just surf through and just pick out some of the best bits? And they gave me this hard drive just full of old clips. And it was just, I was sitting there in my office, after hours, just watching these. It was like the intro to Italia 90. It was like Les during the World Cup 86. It was like an NSL final of, Sydney Croatia versus Melbourne Knights down at, and I'm just flicking through these old clips and it was just gold. And I'm like, what? They should just re-release this stuff. Football fans would just sit and watch these old games because everything about the coverage was just so nostalgic. I was having the best time. So yeah, no, it was epic. What they did on that platform is unique.
James, I'm going to say it here first, live in the pod. SBS The World Game, hosted by Claudio Fabiano. It's going to happen. The World Game, the show itself, has been on for years.
I thought coming up with an outro. I'm like, that's terrible.
No. The show,
the World Game, name
on SBS was on for years, and it hasn't been on for a couple of years. Claude is bringing it back. SBS prime time, and I can't wait for it.
No, but
with his new outro.
If he wants to, so we're just having a bit of a sideline conversation about your career at the moment. So if he wants to try and help grow the Aussie game, rather than being the world game, what is it? What about the country's game or this nation's game?
Don't know how I like it. We'll talk about
this. Look, to answer both your questions at one time, it's an honor being on that platform, and to be even associated with that brand is just epic. And I feel it when I'm in there, that the respect that I have for them and that they give to me as well is just awesome. I love my relationship with SBS. And as for the Australian game, man, I love everything about the game here, and I'm still playing it, but I grew up playing in it. Unfortunately, sometimes there's weird decisions that are being made around our game. And even, look, media is no different. It's the same as the actual performance. It's the same as the decisions made with fans and stuff. There's some strange decisions. And sometimes people have their own ways of viewing things and they want certain people to be a part of it. Sometimes they want some people not to be a part of it. And, you respect it. But whenever I get my opportunity, I always try and big up the local game as much as I can. But unfortunately, I don't often get the chance I would like to hero the local game, and a lot of the time that's not my decision. I'll leave that there.
You'll get it, don't worry.
Yeah.
Stephen, I think you know what time it is.
I think the time has come. He's had a bit of time now to think about it. Claude's, it's a big question. Who is your coach's son nomination and why?
Coach's son. So this one, you stumped me with it. When we started, you said coach's son needs to be someone like a proper coach's pet, and
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna stitch up one of my best mates, and I'm gonna say Adamo for this one. I'm gonna say Adamo's the coach's son. He's he's gone on to I stayed clear, I stayed independent. He's gone on, signed on with Optus, and then takes all the good gigs at Optus because he's there all the time. So while I have to work here in the middle of the night, he gets to jet set off to the J League, and he sets off to the Premier League and Anfield. He gets all those gigs because he's there day in, day out. Send me. Why don't you? I got this idea.
He does some great stuff.
He's the best, bro.
He's the bloke like, you're going to send me to Liverpool? Oh, okay, no worries. I'll do it, guys.
Yeah. And there's probably conversations where they say to him, I was thinking of sending Claude. No, Claude's busy. I spoke to him the other day. I don't think he can do it. I think I can do it. But so I think, he suits it. But no, he's a legend, man. He deserves everything he's getting at the moment.
But we're going to have to get him on the podcast so he can return service.
You should.
Then.
You should. You absolutely should, man. He's got stories. Yeah.
Big. Claude, thank you so much for joining us on The Coach's Son Parks the Bus. Stephen, great episode again today. Guys, make sure you give us a like, follow, subscribe, give it a share. We'll see you next time on The Coach's Son. Claude, cheers.
See you guys. Thank you.
This was not meant to happen. This could not happen.